Hey everyone, let me know if you are joining me live, if you're listening in, where you're joining me from. I will wait for people to come in, introduce themselves, leave comments if you're comfortable with it. And just looking for Zoe. While you join in, I'm going to just switch on my ring light, and you're going to have a lot of background noise today because I am with my dogs Zoe and the Streeties. And my door is open so that they can come in and go when they want to. So you might have a lot of background noise. But if you're here, if you're listening in, let me know. Leave a comment. Let me know from where you're joining me. And let me know if you're able to hear me or not as well. Zoe's here. So you'll hear a lot of like background stuff, okay? Like Zoe coming in and trying to come down and trying to sleep here. She's been resting all evening. Also, I don't know if you believe or not, but in any case, happy Valentine's Day. While I don't know, do I celebrate it? Do I not? Do I want to? But it's a good time to kind of talk about love, connection, and I just finished a live on the same topic, and maybe we will talk about that as well. Can you just give me a second? I will switch on my light. Or is this okay? Are you able to see? Is this all clear? No problems? Then I let it be. I already have like a Chinese here. Happy Valentine's Day to you too. So, I've had like a long day and I'm super tired. Okay. But I mean, I was telling my therapist also that this is a commitment I kind of have made for myself and for those who are coming in regularly and listening in, or even listening it later. However, whatever be the number of the listeners, but I think it's my commitment. So I even changed the timing today because I had another live and I wanted like a buffer and a break in between. So I had that. Zoe is here, hoping to find some space to sleep here. Okay, what's been going on with all of you? Let me know how have things been since the last week, uh, or since the last time you tuned in. Were you able to catch my previous live if you missed it? Do you know the question I asked in that live? Because we'll be discussing that, and we have a couple of other things to discuss as well. I'm just bringing it out because I feel like I lose track of what is planned if I don't have it in front of me. I had a very interesting week. Why is it not here? It's on my official phone. Okay. So I had a very interesting week. I had like a great workshop with kids uh, and adults as well in one of the apartment complexes, and it went so well. I mean, I was so happy the way it went. So when we started out, it was just like everybody who was there in the room were dog lovers, and I was anticipating a mixed crowd, people who love dogs, people who might be scared of dogs. The topic was safety and politeness around dogs, so we were going to talk a lot about dog body language, human body language, all of that. And I go in and everybody is dog lovers, everybody has dogs, and I was like, what am I going to tell any of them? And are they going to find this interesting, helpful, as a learning opportunity? What value can I add? So that's how I started. um, but as we started discussing, it went so well. um, and I'm so glad. I feel like, we take into we take it for granted that dog lovers and dog parents are aware of everything, they know everything, so what value we can add. But it was a good opportunity for me to kind of realize that we always have opportunities to learn and unlearn ideas, and sometimes what we may know might be just limited because of the exposure we have had, the kind of information we have access to, and we always have opportunity to learn more. So I think that was a very good experience for me. It was also something I love doing. I love talking about um, safety and politeness, because I think that's something that is overlooked, and especially with children, they are quite the um, vulnerable group. So if something goes wrong, they are the ones who get into problems, and they are the ones who suffer. So I wanted to ensure that, we cover that group. So that was an interesting um, thing that happened for me this week. I also read quite a few research papers, and one of them really ticked me off, where I had to share my thoughts on Instagram as well. So I thought maybe we will just pull that paper up and then see what my thoughts were about it and why I had such a big reaction to it. Um, Apart from that, I think there were a few places where I saw questions around barking, excessive barking by dogs. I am kind of encountering that situation. So how do we go about it? Um, and finally, obviously, the question that I asked the last week about how do we feel about anger in dogs, or do we think that animals, and we see this a lot, right? Dogs are pure, they give unconditional love. We see this kind of pure character attached to animals, and specifically dogs. uh, Firstly, is that true, and is it fair on the dogs when we make such statements? So I wanted to talk about that. I think that's about it, I guess, for this week. I don't know, did I miss something? Oh, yeah. I came across this question as well, where someone was asking, how do you respond to people who say they don't train their dog? And I have been told that, oh, you don't train your dogs and you're not a trainer. So, obviously, let's discuss whether it's a matter of irresponsibility when you don't train your dog, or could it be another way of life? So, let's discuss that as well. I don't know. I thought I heard Laddu bark. Yeah, he's around wanting to go out or play with somebody, I guess. Okay, so if you're here, um, what do we take up first? Shall we take up mm, excessive barking? I think that's a question, so we can quickly discuss that and then we can move on to the other topics. Okay, so the question I saw on one of the groups was, this person's dog has started barking excessively, especially at the door, and not letting anybody in the vicinity of their entrance. I think a friend of mine, a client of mine, also had this question where one of their dogs is barking in response, or getting very worked up in response to the barking of other dogs. And laddu is laddu and lady also tend to bark quite a bit. So let's talk about that. Um, so I don't know if you've heard the book about Barking the Sound of Language by Turid Rugas, where Turid lists a bunch of different types of barking. So I think first and foremost, I would probably look at what kind of bark it is. Is it, alert barking? Alert barking is something that I have seen um, lady do. She would do alert barking. She still does alert barking, which is she's just letting us know that somebody's around. There's guard barking, which is clearly what Laddu is doing. There's excitement barking. There's frustration barking. There is, um, yeah, there are quite a few fear barking. There are quite a few types of barks. So first and foremost, it's important that we understand what kind of barking we are seeing in our dogs, right? Because each of them communicate at different states. So with Lady, she's letting us know that someone's around, but with Laddu, he's very specific that don't enter the space, don't come here, and kind of safeguarding the space that he is occupying. Um, I've seen Sammy would do excitement barking. I've seen Zoe do frustration barking. So I've seen like different kinds of barks, even in just like the dogs that I have had, or shared space with. So it's very important to understand what kind of bark you're seeing in your dog to be able to cater to the need that they have. So if it is um, excitement barking, how am I going to address it? If it is guard barking, why is your dog feeling the need to guard their space and barking, at invaders? uh, Alert barking, is that a problem in itself, or how can we ensure that our dogs feel more regulated where they don't feel the need to resort to alert barking? Whatever might be the reason, first it's important to understand what it is to be able to address the bark in itself. So first and foremost, I would encourage you to start looking at your dog's body language in its entirety to be able to guess or understand what kind of bark it might be and what might be going on. uh, I'll try and share how I would address each of the situations, right? So with Laddu, I would, at this point, I kind of feel like the space he's occupying in our house seems too small a space for him to escape out of here when someone comes over. So he feels very riled up when people come over. So there are two ways to deal with it. Because he's a street dog, I kind of open our gate and then he tends to run away if he feels like it, or he gets to see the person more closely and then he just relaxes. But that's something that I would do with him only because I have that chance of like letting him go away. Also, he would choose to do that because he was uncomfortable in the space. But if he's not a street dog, what would I do? I would obviously try and take him away from that place, from that situation. So this happened a few times when we would have this water can delivery would happen to our house, and people would come in and deliver water cans, and he would get very uncomfortable with it. So before they would come in, we bring him into the room. I would sit with him and lock the door, and my husband would allow people to come in and then do the work and then go. That way, he doesn't feel like he has to protect the space he is occupying, and we end up going to a different situation altogether, and we don't encounter the bark as much. Lot of times it happens where with Lady, where she's alert barking, and sometimes she's also guard barking where she's asking people not to hover around our house. In those situations, I tend to do a lot of splitting and reassurance. I just keep reassuring them, saying that don't worry, acknowledge that something is bothering them, but also let them know that they don't have anything to worry about. I'm here, I'll take care of the situation. I'll try to again call them away from that environment. um, and it normally works if they're not already too riled up. So that helps. And that's the same thing that I've told my client to try with their dog, who was getting riled up on listening to other dogs bark outside. And this used to happen with Sammy as well a lot. So when we were living in my parents' house, and we used to have a terrace that would overlook the streets, and there would be street dogs who would be barking, and Sammy would get riled up with the street dogs barking. The first and foremost thing that I had to do was reduce the exposure to that situation firstly. So I would know when these things would happen. I would know evening time the street dogs would bark. Usually that's when they would get wired up, and they would be very hyper. So they would be barking, and I know that evenings would be the time when I would want to reduce the exposure. So I would shut out the windows, the terrace doors, as much as possible, so that I kind of like reduce the sound that was coming in for Sammy. uh, I would then, when it would occur, I would do a lot of like hand signals. I would reassure him a lot, bring him away from the situation. Whenever he would get riled up, splitting would be something that I would use extensively. And over a period of time, I think after a few months, I saw that he wouldn't respond to the barks at all. He would just look up, from like he would be sleeping, and he would get up and look up as to what is this noise, what's happening, and go back to sleep. And that change happened because I could firstly reduce the exposure, or reduce the situation in which he would need to respond with that kind of barking. Second is a lot of reassurance, and third is trying to take him away from the situation as well, where I'm able to acknowledge that he was feeling uncomfortable, but also take care of the situation, bring him away from that environment, um, and keep at it consistently. I think that is the other bit that is important. So I would do this, and I've asked my client to try this too, and then wait for how that works for them. Um, so with excessive barking, it's so important to know why our dogs are barking so much. I think in this case, when someone's barking uh, at the door, whenever there's movement outside the door, it's a great idea. Firstly, if you know when would be the most busy hours, right? So for example, if you're living in India, in one of the urban cities, and in an apartment complex, that the evening times are quite like uh, busy, with a lot of like movement and lots of noise, and people are going out, like kids are going out and playing. There's a lot of like movement around. So I would then reduce the exposure to this main door and the corridors outside the house during that period. And the more I was able to do it, the better my dogs were able to cope with it. And I think, I know I spoke about active avoidance in one of the lives before, and I do want to take it up and then talk about it more in detail. But I think this is the power of active avoidance, where it gives our dogs a little bit of a break to be able to learn different ways to cope with the same trigger. Um, I think there's one great video of Sammy doing this with other dogs, and I want to bring that up as well as a conversation when I want to talk about like active avoidance. But the more we end up putting our dogs in a situation where they've learned a particular way of dealing with it, um, without giving them time off and waste, like to learn different ways, we'll just probably strengthen the same neural pathways without giving them ability to build new neural pathways. So I think giving them break from these stressful situations can really help them, like weaken the neural pathways that they have built, and build new ways of learning. So I think with Sammy, he started learning that if something was too much, like the barking was too much a trigger, instead of barking at it and get frustrated about it, he would just look up. Sometimes he would look up, he would figure it out and go back to sleep. Sometimes he would look up and then look at me, then I would reassure him a lot. And that helped him cope very well over a period of time. So I think it's important to remember active avoidance and reassurance when you're dealing with triggers in this manner. But interestingly, with the clients conversation, they've had major changes in their environment as well, which means that adds to the stress when there has been change in the environment, and when the dogs have not gotten um, enough time to rest. Of course, you can ask questions. Please feel free to ask questions. If if it's an easy one to address, I will address it. If I feel like I need to, if I of course, it's not a consultation, so I won't be able to like give you exact solution for your issue, but I'll give you like probably way forward, how to look at it, or if it's something that I might have to like look up and research and come back to you, I'll do that as well. So please do ask questions. There's an agenda, but like we are not strict with the agenda, and we're not strict with the timelines also. We have gone 1 hour, 1 hour 45 minutes as well. So please go ahead, ask your question, and I'll address it, and I'll take them as and when they come. So I was talking about my clients, and how they've had like changes in their environment, and that can add to uh, instability for the dogs, and it can add the stress and anxiety for them, which also might just increase their barking behavior. And I think with my client, this was not the case before, where the dog was getting riled up. So I think it's also important to check whether your dog has had some major stressful event happen to them that has um, given rise or triggered this kind of reaction from them, or they have moved to a dysregulated space, mental state, where they're finding it hard to cope with the stressors that they were able to cope in the past. So I think this is what I would look at when you're looking at barking and any behavior for that matter, but barking specifically. If I were to address, I would first figure out what is the reason for the bark, what is instigating, because how would you respond to that particular kind of barking would differ depending on what kind of bark it is. And then you know use the ways that that is applicable to that particular situation. So with Zoe, she would do a lot of frustration barking, and this happens specifically when she's hungry. She's not a dog who barks at all, but she barks at very specific situations, which we have like figured that when she's hungry and she's asking for food, but we have not heard it, or it's not yet her time, so we have not yet started preparing her meals, but she's hungry. Then she would start barking, and that's a very different kind of bark. And interestingly, she barks at objects. She doesn't bark at us, she barks at objects. And she goes and barks at freezer. She goes and barks at broomsticks and mops, stuff like that. And if you just look at the body language, it might seem like she's doing some kind of guard barking or warning barks or something of that sort, but it's very clear that she's frustrated, because I'm also able to see the pattern of the bark. When is it happening and what is instigating? So it's also important to look at this dog in front of you, and what are they trying to communicate with us. So I think with Zoe, that was a thing. So the only way to address that bark is basically address the need, which is she's hungry. Give her her meal, right? What other kind of bark? Laddu barks when he's asking for playing. So that's connection seeking, I think, in a way, looking for social interaction and connection. And he barks, he initiates the play with barking. So you can see how each kind of bark and each situation is so different. Um, okay, so the question is, I want to be a dog behaviorist in humane way, practically mainly behavior modification with really aggressive dogs. Is there a course in India? Guide me. Barks is your place to go to. You can look up Bucks, and you can look up Sinur Pangar. Uh, we don't do behavior modification. We use the biosocial psychology approach to behaviors, and we also do applied ethology. So that's the approach. And I have done my diploma from Bucks as well. So yeah, I think you can look that up. um, so I think that was the conversation around barking, excessive barking. I feel like um, it becomes excessive when we are not able to address the need, and we are not able to uh, bring it down to exactly what is the situation and what's causing their barking. So I don't know if there's anything called excessive, normal. It's just our dogs communicating and probably escalating their communication uh, to a point where we probably can listen to them. So I think if you're looking at excessive barking, then your dog is trying to desperately communicate with you. So it is worth digging deeper into what is going on and why are they barking, what is the need that they're trying to meet, and meet that need. I guess that was it about barking. With the barks question, I remembered that the other thing that happened this week was we all got our formal barks graduate badges. I have them available here? I will try and then bring that up into the live. Just give me. Oh, it's a bit of a task. It has to be converted into PDF and then uploaded. Sorry, but it is there. It's there on my post, one of my recent posts, where I have a picture and I have the box badge. It says, one second. It says Bucks graduate, Bucks CBC AE. So that is Canine Behavior Consultant and Applied Ethologist. And it's a very it's a matter of pride and privilege, I would say, that I get to use this badge because I managed to do my diploma. I think I finished it in 2020 in about 18 months. This was during pandemic and lockdown, and up until backbed, which is the diploma, short form for the diploma, I had not had a lot of dog interactions. It was just my dogs, and that is all like I would see and I knew about. And I barely had any information about dogs, dog behavior, and I have made like lots of mistakes along the way. But through backbed, I did manage to learn a lot about dogs, but so much more. If you go through my lives that I've done, this is the sixth one, I guess. In all of the previous ones, you will see that there is a lot of conversations around approaches to dogs, dog behavior, philosophies, lifestyle, belief systems. I think there is so much more than just about dog behavior. So I think a lot of my journey during and after backbed has been about learning and questioning and going down these conversations. And I think I don't think I would have gotten to where I am today as a person, as a professional, as a dog parent, whatever you might say, or for myself, I wouldn't have been able to show up for myself, or deal with my emotional experiences that I have gone through since 2018, if it were not for the learnings I have had through backbed, and the ones that I stumbled upon thanks to backbed. Like couple of examples, for if I'd have to give you, one is I very recently got I very recently got neurodiversity diagnosis, and I did not even think of going down that road to understand myself better, and find neurodiversity affirming approaches, if it were not for the conversations we tend to have in the bugs ecosystem, be it around mental well-being, emotional well-being, connection, um, all of that. So I think a lot of what I have been able to do for myself, for my dogs, for the relationships that I share around me have been hugely impacted um, by the journey I've had since back then. uh, is it really difficult to find humane approach in India practically? I'm not sure if you mean humane approach or India. uh, y- I mean, maybe you could explain the question a little further. There are quite a lot of art plus trainers. There are a lot of aversive trainers, just like any other place, I guess. Um, the good thing about what we have is the wealth of knowledge we get to use by observing our street dogs. And I think the kind of life that they tend to have is quite great, because when they live in harmony with the humans around, so it's quite interesting in that sense. um, this reminds me of another thing. So how many of you all remember the post on Instagram and the comments on it about making your dog look up and having, neck discomfort? Do any of you remember all those conversations we had uh, on Instagram, but also on these lives? I've spoken about it. I have, responded to the comments or the questions that came on it, and gave a lot of, like, had like a lot of back and forth with a lot of people there as well. um, so one of the points I made in that post, if you remember, was on the neck discomfort of, when you are asking your dog to look up for extended periods of time, then they do, end up having neck discomfort, right? This was the conversation. Lots of people were like, you are, what? It's laughable. You are not trained. You don't know anything. Do you even know how to deal with dogs, etc., etc., etc.? There were like a lot of comments on this. Okay, this is the background of it. Now, about a week back or 10 days back, I was in my parents' house and my grandmom was visiting us from my hometown. She's 85 plus, I think 80, 85 plus. And Zoe was on the ground, she was on the floor, and we were sitting on the divan, the couch or whatever, and she was looking up at us. And she was looking up at us for quite some time, about a minute or like 2 minutes or something. After that, my grandmom was like, poor thing, she's looking up at, like she's having to look up at you people. She'll start getting neck pain. I found that so interesting, because my grandmom, who is 80, 85 plus, who doesn't have canine behavior education or knowledge, has not gotten um, the formal education on this, is able to look at this dog in front of her and empathetically observe and express that this poor dog looking up for so long could be in some kind of net discomfort. And I think this is what we tend to see with a lot of people in India who have lived along dogs. They don't have to be companion dogs, but we have lived with free roaming dogs, inside outside dogs, like how Laddu, Lady, and Bala are for us. And there's so much empathy. Of course, like any other society, any other culture, there are, you know, good and bad aspects of people, uh, in any aspect, not even just dog behavior and dog caring and caregiving, but the richness that I could see my grandmom say this. I could see in my hometown, which is a very small town in one of the states in India, called Hampi Hospet, where my our domestic worker in our hometown also is able to look at dogs in a more empathetic, like they know they're able to be more one with and mindful of animals and dogs, than a lot of professionals that I see. So it's quite telling and interesting about where we are headed as dog caregivers, dog behavior professionals, dog professionals in general. But yeah, I think that was one story I've been wanting to share. I think I wanted to share it last week, and it slipped my mind, and it's great that I could bring up here. Okay, so anything in terms of barking, anything in terms of the Barks badge. So if rest assured, if I have the Barks badge, and as long as I have the Barks badge, and I hope I have it for as long as I'm a professional, uh, you can be, rest assured that I am upskilling myself. I'm doing my, I'm approaching whatever conversations we're having with the dog's welfare in mind, and also here to share my lived experience and my approach to dogs. And it is going to be empathetic, it is going to be research backed, it is going to be holistic, it is going to be all of these things and more. So as long as I have that badge, you can be assured of, the quality of the things that I'm saying. I might be wrong, I might also be on my learning journey, but if you call it out and if you, share your experiences, if you ask me questions, I will be open to going and doing my own research about it and having a discussion about that as well. Scarlett, of course, you can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, all of these places. I'm under the handle Dog Promise, DOGPAWMISE, both on Facebook and Instagram. You can just leave a message on either of the platforms and we can chat about this. Okay, uh, moving on to the next topic. Do you guys have any question? And do you have any thoughts of what we were already discussing? If not, we can go to the next topic. And I think this is a good point to talk about whether not training your dogs is irresponsible dog parenting or it is just another way of life. I think this is a good way to like move into that conversation. So I asked this question on my gentle parenting of dogs group as well. Yeah, I had also shared that question there a few days back, maybe a week or two back. What are your thoughts if someone comes up to you and tells you that they don't do dog training? Is your first reaction going to be this is irresponsible, or is your response going to be uh, what can I learn from this? Or what are they trying to, is this a safe way of being? What is this way of living? Is there something that I can learn from you? What are your thoughts, Scarlett? You can leave a DM and we can take it from there, whatever is the discussion. Okay, so my thoughts, right? I think the question that was asked on this and the way people were talking to me about it when they came up to my post and said, "Oh, you're not a trainer. You don't know how to train dogs, etc., etc." Clearly, they were meaning it as an insult, which meant that they felt like training is the one and only way to live with dogs safely. Um, and I feel like it depends again what your definition of training is. If your definition of training is basically behavior modification, which is try and then achieve changes in behavior superficially on the surface, um, or is your definition of training basically to teach your dogs life skills, to navigate difficult situations in life, give them or help them use their own cognitive abilities, help them, I mean, understand their communication, you build the communication with them using body language signals and signs. uh, if all of that is your definition of training, then it's very different. So firstly, we need to understand what do you mean by training. One. Second is, if we feel like the only way to live with a dog is by training certain behaviors into them and training certain behaviors out of them, then we are also not respecting the fact that our dogs learn all the time. They are learning constantly. uh, whether we are training certain things or not training, or even if we are training outside of our training, they're learning a lot of things on their own, just like we are. um, Very interestingly, in a fun banter kind of a thing. My parents and I are constantly have this conversation saying, "Who, we never taught you this. Like, where did you learn this? Or you are learning all of these things, but we taught you something else altogether." And our dogs are have learning in similar manner constantly. They It's not just what we are teaching them through conditioning, uh, classical conditioning, operant conditioning. There are a lot of different ways to learn. Um, and are we taking that into cognizance and then working with them? Are we able to see that they have their own inherent abilities to deal with situations, and then responding to, you know uh, or making use of their cognitive abilities to use safe behaviors, but not necessarily the behaviors we want them to display. So what does training include? And is it irresponsible to not train your dog? Or could it just be that if you are coexisting and co-living with another companion animal, here in our case it's a dog, could it be that we can learn their ways of learning, their abilities, their developmental skills, like at what stage of development are they at, what they can learn, what they cannot learn, what are their coping mechanisms, and how can we navigate situations um, without being a risk to those around us? Is that training? So it's important to first and foremost figure out what we mean by training. Is it just superficial behavior modification, where you train certain behaviors into your dogs and train certain behaviors out of them? Or is it, can we build using the abilities that our dogs already have, the skills they have, understanding their physiology, their needs, and just navigating life in a safe way? So I think what I do is the second one. Uh, I have not taught my dogs any commands. Uh, I don't teach them any commands, and but we still manage to navigate life and difficult situations while being safe for each other as well as those around us. Uh, when we are in difficult situations, we're able to communicate with each other. When we are not able to deal with a certain situation, we are able to safely walk out of it. When we uh, are in some situations where we are able to cope with it, we have healthy coping mechanisms. These are some things that we have learned. These are the life skills that my dogs have been able to pick up thanks to the kind of lifestyle we have been able to create for them. um is this irresponsible? Is this just another way of living with dogs safely? Because the assumption is that if you're not training your dogs to do certain things and behave certain ways and not behave certain ways, then you're just not living safely with your dogs. So I think it's worth thinking. If someone is not training, I'm not saying that everyone who's not training their dogs is doing what we are doing in the Bucks way. uh, all I'm saying is it's great to get a little curious about another person's lived experience, because I have seen this, and I saw the comments on that post, and the assumption was if you're not training your dog and not training with positive reinforcement, then the assumption is it's all punishments and that's how you live your life. So the assumption is there are just two ways of living: positive reinforcement or punishments. There is no other way of living with dogs, is the assumption. I'm inviting you to think, could there just be another way of coexisting with dogs and co living with them in a safe manner where they have the skills, where we build the skills too of, understanding them, meeting their needs, regulating ourselves as well as helping them co-regulate. I think that's another lived experience, and that's another way of living with dogs, and it's worth thinking about it. I'm just inviting you to think that this is also a possibility. So that's all I wanted to say in terms of training and not training your dog. Again, I'm reiterating, I'm not saying that if someone's not training, they're always doing the right thing by their dogs. It's good to just get a little curious, understand what they're doing, allow for a dialogue and a discussion, a conversation before we reach to a blind conclusion that it is an irresponsible way of living with dogs. Any thoughts? Any anything that you feel like you want to add to this? Should we do the research paper next, or shall we take up the conversation on anger and morality in dogs? Which one would you pick? Those of you who are listening in for the first time, if you have not already subscribed to the channel, do subscribe, do share it with people that you think would appreciate it. Do like the video, please. It'll encourage me to do more of this. Um, and if you are sharing it, if you're letting other people know about this channel, if more people are tuning in, it will encourage me to do this a lot more sincerely and consistently. So yeah, okay, so I think let's take up the conversation on the research paper, because I kind of feel like the conversation you are having just flows into the next topic. Chani, we have the same thoughts. Yes, let's do the paper. Okay, so I'm going to bring the paper up on screen, but it's too small to read what's there on the paper. So you can just note down the name of the paper and I will bring it down again. The name of the paper is Evaluation of Association Between Retention in the Home and Attendance at Puppy Socialization Classes. Okay, did you have a chance to kind of note it down? Once you do, let me know, I'll bring that down. Evaluation of association between retention in the home and attendance at puppy socialization classes. Okay, so the paper, I'm going to bring it up for myself so that I'm able to read it separately around. Okay, what is the paper about? They basically did a survey of about 248 dogs and they evaluated whether the dogs were retained at home or there were relinquishment of the dogs. So were they given up to the shelters? And what they found was that yeah, higher retention in the homes was reported for dogs that participated in Humane Society puppy socialization classes, were female, wore head collars as puppies, were handled frequently as puppies, were more responsive to commands, slept on or near the owner's bed, or lived in homes without young children. This was the conclusion. So, what were the different situations in which they felt like, the dogs were retained? One is, yeah, participated in socialization classes by Humane Society puppy socialization classes. They were female. They wore head collars as puppies. They were handled more frequently. They were more responsive to commands, slept on or near owner's bed, and or lived in homes without young children. So, as you read this paper, there are conversations around puppy socialization. We'll come to that, but use of head collars. Or even before we go to that, there's one statement in this paper that really ticked me off. because that kind of shows what people are looking at as the goals. Okay. um, this is on the, I don't know, I'm not able to see the page number, but if you, this is freely available. If you just check it on Google Scholar, you'll find the paper. um, Dogs that wore head collars often or occasionally as puppies were significantly more likely to be retained in the home than dogs that did not wear head collars as puppies. um, Head collars can give owners an effective and humane ways of controlling their dog's behavior. Anything kind of popping out for you at this point? And they have referenced a couple of papers for the statement, but the next statement is made independently, I think, by the authors of this paper. Having greater control may give owners greater confidence and reduce frustration that can lead to relinquishment. Yeah. So the entire goal seems to be, what is the best way you can control a particular dog? And the more you're able to control a dog, the and this is the claim uh, that they're making based on head collars, and this is the statement. This is a claim, neither proved nor rebuffed. But the claim is that the more you're able to control the dog's behaviors, the lesser chances of relinquishment. Um, Puppies that are better controlled may learn desired behavior more quickly and have reduced chances of learning undesired behaviors. So it kind of seems that conversations around dog parenting, dog ownership, companion animal ownership, or whatever you'd like to call, seems to begin and end at how much you're able to control, how much you're able to make them fit into your life, than figuring out how to coexist. Now, I'll give you an example. And this is where a little bit of intersectionality comes in, right? You get married, and I'm talking about India. So, most often, um, people don't live together before they get married. Most often, this is, of course, it's changed quite a bit now. Um, but let's assume you get married or you're in a relationship, whatever it is, and you start to live together under one roof. Um, if one person is only attempting to change and control the other person, um, and evaluate that relationship only based on how much they're able to control, and the more you're able to control, the more they get adjusted to your house, right? So it's not so much as okay, what are your needs, what are my needs, what are your boundaries, what are my boundaries, what are your choices, how would you like to spend time, how do I like to spend time, how can we coexist together. uh, if that conversation doesn't happen, if you're in a relationship with somebody and you both end up under one roof, and the only way that you're able to coexist and cohabitate with this person is by being controlled by that person, and the more you let them control you, the more they have control over you, the more interested they are in you. Is that a great relationship to be in? Kritika says, teachers who I was scared of, I listened and complied without question because I never felt safe with them. Exactly. So many of us, and I think this is another thing that we see in a lot of cultures and societies, where questioning people of authority, uh, people of power, is not seen as a great thing. So we see consequences when you question, when you respond, retaliate, when you don't comply. And to avoid those consequences, you just end up complying, because you can never question the people with power, with authority. It could be parents, teachers, it could be people with power in workplaces, it could be relationship dynamics where one holds more power than the other. Uh, and those are, and I think women can speak to it a lot more. Women and non-male individuals can speak to this, that uh, these kind of relationships where power and control decide the course of your relationship is not a great relationship to be in. It's toxic at best, and can be abusive as well. So the fact that more puppies who have gone into socialization classes and are learning desired behaviors, responding to commands, wearing head collars because they can be controlled more, and if they are adhering to all this, only then the dog stays back in the house. What does that say about the quality of relationship, quality of emotional safety, quality of attachment that that dog might have? And mind you, all of these studies are done as surveys where the questions are asked to the dog parents, dog humans, the humans of the dog. So there's not much understanding of um, the dog's perspective from, in at least in a study like this, where they're questioning what did the dog do when they were young, what all did you know what all were what was their training method, what all were the training equipment, did they go for socialization, did they learn commands and all of that. And if they are you know um, uh, controllable, then they seem to see that there's more retention in the house. It kind of shows what we are going for when we bring home a dog, doesn't it? Don't you feel like this is what it is kind of showing? And this is quite unfortunate, where if you're bringing a dog home, a puppy home, your goal is mostly how can I do things, how can I engage professionals and approaches to control my dog better. Why not how can I understand my dog better and find ways to meet their needs and build a good, safe space for them where they feel more comfortable? Why not that as the goal? It's a good question to ask. So this paper really riled me up when I was reading, not because of the paper or the methodology or the paper content or the question that they were trying to answer. Just that one statement kind of shows where we are going or where we are at with dog caregiving, or as dog parents, where we have reached as collectively as a global society, where we have reached. That's quite unfortunate. The other parts of it was puppy socialization, and they were talking about socializing puppies at the young age of. Results suggest several practices that veterinarians may recommend to enhance the likelihood that puppies will remain in the first home, such as enrolling 7 to 12-week puppies in early learning and socialization classes. That's the other thing. We spoke about puppies extensively, I think, in the last session, last live, or the one before that. 7-week old puppies, first and foremost, I think we will discuss this paper in the next session, which is the, like, I will research that and then I'll bring it up as to what we see in free living dogs. uh, when do they leave their families, their groups? Do they even leave it at any point? How long do they stay with them? 7-week dog is such a young dog. um, it's like At a 3 or 4 year old, you're thinking of what kind of classes and coaching you can put your child into. Are they there developmentally to learn things? Do they have the developmental skills? Is that what they need at that point? Worth questioning. 7 to 12 weeks is less than 2 to 3 months of age. So I don't know. I mean, why are we not thinking about how best to give them a safe environment? What are the needs of the dog when they are so young? If they are away from their mother for whatever reason, how can we best fill that void? We spoke about the puppy that my friend had rescued and who was so um, feeling like she had such high connection need which only the mama dog could meet till that point. um, and none of the humans were able to meet that kind of need. So how can we fill that void? How can we give them safe spaces? How can we make them feel safe in our presence? How can we get them to just understand our home first and foremost? What are their developmental needs at that point? At such a young age, don't you think safety, shelter, attachment is so much more important than thinking about socialization classes? Of course, you can introduce things to them, maybe bring in a new toy, bring in a new smell, maybe one person that they might meet, a new person. But classes where they might meet too many people, where they might be overwhelmed, is that a good way to go about it? So I think these are two things that kind of popped out. I won't even get into head collars. Let's not even get into that. Uh, the idea that control was seemed like the most critical factor for people, and that people are going for socialization classes and training and whatnot at such a young age for a dog, um, seems a little unfair for the dog. Maybe find out what the dog's needs are first. So I was quite frustrated. I was very frustrated, and I don't know if you're able to like gauge it in my reaction to it. But yes, I was very frustrated with that paper, um, or the findings of that paper. I won't talk about. It's not a critical critique of the paper itself. It's just what was the findings and what it shows about where we are going as dog parents. So that was a paper. Any other thoughts you might have? Please do read it up if you want to discuss it more in detail. I wanted to bring up these 2 points because these are what like stood out for me. But there might be something else that might stand out for you, and you might want to discuss that. So we can always bring it up later. I've given you the paper name, and you can read it, and we can discuss it more in detail next time, or whenever you have any questions about it. You can drop your questions on DM for me if you are not if you don't want to kind of wait till the next live, or if you can't make it to the live and you're watching it later, then you can always drop a DM and then I can take up the question. Okay, so that brings us to the last topic of the day. um so those of you who are not there in my previous live, I had asked this question about what do you think, or how does anger in dogs make you feel? Do you think dogs get angry? If they do, then how do you deal with anger in dogs? Um, and that kind of relates to the other question that I had, which is, if we tend to say that dogs can't, they are quite moral, they don't have the so-called bad morals or bad emotions, um, then is that actually doing being detrimental to our dogs? So these were the two questions I had. But before I get into my thoughts about both these things, um, Before I get to that, Chandni has a question. The excessive pressure on young developing brains would have negative consequences, no? Are we breaking their brains? Exactly, right? I mean, at such young age, and let's keep dogs aside. Look at kids, children, right? Human children. At very young ages, when their brains are not there yet to process, comprehend, understand. Like, for example, I'll give you this, right? If I am uh, right, at the toddler ages, about 6 or 7, um, the kids start having the need to throw things, right? But they don't entirely understand the consequences of what throwing does to the other person, right? Now, the brains are not there yet to understand consequences, but they have a need developmentally to do this, right? Like there's some kind of a developmental stage that they are at, right? Is it worth teaching them much about consequences at this point of time? I don't know. Will they get it? I don't know. I mean, we can go more in detail. There are a lot of like dog parents who talk, not dog parents. See, I never get children. It's always dog. My friend visited with her baby, and I was like, "Hi, puppy." So yeah. Anyway, digressing. But if we can't understand what are the developmental needs of every individual, and what they're able to learn, not able to learn, are they even ready for a particular lesson at a particular point, what does natural consequences mean? So a lot of people talk about teaching, training, disciplining by saying this is, they're getting natural consequences, or they're learning what natural consequences of their actions are. What is all this, and are their brains even there to process that? Or, for example, I don't know if you know about this. There was a period, I think things are changing now as gentle parenting gets more popular, but there was a period in the West, in the Eurocentric, European and American regions, where people were encouraged to leave the crying babies alone in a different room because the baby will learn to manage themselves after one point when they realize that the caregiver is not coming. Have you heard of this approach to when a baby is crying? Have you heard of this approach? If you listen to Dr. Gabor Mate, who talks a lot about trauma, especially childhood trauma, he talks about this, and he talks about how parents not showing up, caregivers not showing up for children when they are crying, especially at such young age, can be so traumatic for the child. The child is very clearly seeking their caregiver, but you're so hell-bent on teaching them certain lessons or certain, this is desired behavior, this is undesired behavior, these are whatever, right? I feel like we if we don't understand, and this is why we need to go a little beyond the superficial behavior modification, right? If we can't understand where the behaviors are coming from, if we can't understand whether what are the cognitive abilities our dogs inherently have, what is the developmental phase they're at, and are they in a place to learn something in that phase, if we can't understand all of this and we're stuck in this bubble of training, then we are obviously going to hurt our dogs in the long term. The other thing about dogs, and a lot of us as social beings have, is this high social or need for attachment, right? So we would, and a lot of humans do this too, right? Where we pick um, going through physical pain uh, s- in order to escape emotional pain, right? So if we are causing or doing things to our dogs that are not good for them, but they're getting uh, social needs and emotional needs just satisfied, not even met, just satisfied. There's someone who they can rely on for basic needs. um, our dogs tend to like tolerate that so much of it, so much that we do with them, they tend to tolerate, just so that they don't have to feel the isolation, they don't have to uh, face abandonment, and they tolerate so much. So again, I think a lot of people then don't end up seeing the actual damage that we might be doing to our dogs, because they're settling, they're tolerating so much, they're putting themselves to things that they don't like, they don't want, just so that they can be around caregiver. And we have heard this happen in children too, right? We have heard children doing going through traumatic experiences, only so that they can have their caregiver and caregiver's approval, because that need is so high, that attachment need is so high, that we are ready to put ourselves through all of this too. And that's so unfortunate if our dogs have to do this. So yeah, uh, coming to the question of anger, um, how do you feel about anger? If I ask you, what are your thoughts about anger? And let's not even like go to dogs, but just anger, your own anger, anger in other humans close to you. Do you think anger is a fair emotion to have? Do you think it's a bad emotion? Do you think anger is bad, or the behaviors that we end up experiencing or exhibiting because of anger, those are bad? Is it bad at all? Anything is bad at all in this situation? What are your thoughts about anger? I'll wait for responses and then share thoughts as usual. um, Anger, I feel, is a cherry on top of a lot of hurt or pain. Interesting. Okay. So I'll tell you my Kritika says I used to feel shame when I felt angry. Do you feel the same? Do you feel shame anymore around anger? Because you said used to, so I'm quite intrigued to know, has that changed? I'm guessing you mean teach, but now they teach me more about where my boundaries lie. Interesting. Great. So, anger, I felt it's the cherry on top of a lot of hurt of pain. When Sammy passed away, I was trying to not feel that pain and find stronger emotions that can kind of distract me from that pain, right? So I picked up books that had very heavy content that could make me feel angry about what's going on with the characters in the book. I picked up books that spoke about generational trauma, injustice, and things like that, and then that allowed me to feel angry, so that I didn't have to feel pain or what I was going through, the emotions that I was having. So that was one way of feeling anger. The other is shame when you felt angry, and it also taught you about boundaries. So my journey with angry, and I talk about my own anger, right? So my journey with anger has been one where I couldn't cope with anger. I didn't know what to do with my anger, to a point where I denied that I could be angry. So I remember when my husband and I had just started dating, he was like, what makes you angry, or something of that sort, like something along those lines. And I was like, I don't think I've gotten angry in a long time. And I feel very proud of myself that I've not gotten angry in a long time. I do feel sad, I do feel hurt, I feel disappointed, but I don't think I get angry anymore. That was what I said back then. And I think it comes from the same idea of that shame and guilt, of the previously first not knowing how to deal with anger. Also, because we are told that anger is not a great thing to have. You should not be angry, don't be angry. It's not a quality or a trait that is appreciated in anybody. being angry, to a point where I think now I can probably direct my anger in a better way. Uh, Probably still not in the healthiest way or not where I want to be, but I think I can still direct my anger probably with constructive conversations and discussion, or probably just shutting down for some time till I kind of process my anger and come back. I process my anger very differently today than I used to before, because I didn't know what to do with my anger before. Um, uh, so I think that's been my journey with anger, which then brings me to the question, do dogs get angry? And how do we know whether they get angry or not? Because, and I'll come to what I want to talk about in terms of dogs are pure, kind of like this purity of animals where they can't find, they don't have malice, they don't have um they can't do bad things basically. We'll come to that also, right? But how does anger in dogs make you feel? Like, do you feel dogs get angry? Are they capable of anger or possessiveness, jealousy? Is that a good quality to have? Is that a bad quality to have? If your dog exhibits anger or jealousy or possessiveness or frustration, do you think these are emotions that you think are okay, not okay? What would you do? What are your thoughts? I'll bring up a video about this. So the one video is here. I'm going to mute it because there's a lot of like noise in the background. This is a video on possessiveness, right? And then I'll bring you another video and then I'll share thoughts. But I want to know, what are your thoughts, whether dogs are capable of anger and how does that make you feel? So the black one here is Laddu. The brown one here is Lady. And I'm going to play the video. So you see, Chani has an interesting response. I'll bring that up soon. You can see that the moment Lady started taking step towards me, Laddu stops her. Are you able to see? Are you able to see the video? I've muted the audio. There's no audio for it. Now Zoe, I think, goes on the back behind Lady, I think. No? Somewhere around there. Yeah, she goes behind. You can see Lady has taken again a couple of steps closer. This is an edited video that I had put up for Instagram. Then Zoe has gone towards Lady, and then now Lady is taking one step towards Zoe and Laddu stops. Do you think this is possessiveness? Or do you think what Laddu is doing is good? How would you respond? Is it possessiveness? Is what he's doing good or bad? How would you respond? Any thoughts? I'll bring up Chandni's response in a bit. It's an interesting response. I hope someone is responding. Or I'm just waiting just for someone to respond. So, what you saw in the video just now is something that Laddu has done quite a few times. This was not the first time he was doing. Um, okay, it looks a little like possessiveness. I don't know if it's as black and white as good or bad. Okay, interesting. Chandni has a very similar response, which is I can't imagine that they don't, and they do have the right to feel. So it's not a question of right or wrong. Interesting. Uh, it looks a little like possessiveness. It's just the way he feels about it. Could it be insecurity? Okay, so that's Laddu's point of view. What about Lady? So what Laddu is feeling is possessiveness, and he might be feeling insecure. He might be feeling possessive, and he has the right to feel what he feels. What about Lady? And now, if you have two dogs with this dynamic under your roof, how would you respond? Is one dog right and the other dog wrong? Uh, how would you respond? Okay, while you respond to that, there's another video that I want to talk about. Again, I'll mute it, I'll pause it. Can you see the video? Are you able to see the video? Okay, so I'm going to play it. Lady is sitting on the couch. Okay. Uh, I'll come to your response, Chandni. Another great one. I've muted again. Constantly, my husband and I are talking, or like we're watching something in the background. But you will see. Watch what lady is doing. Okay. Watch lady now. Do you see? Did you see that growl and bark? Another one. Was this anger? Was this possessiveness? Was it something else altogether? Same two dogs, different dynamics or different behaviors from each of the dogs. Is one a different emotion? Is the other a different emotion? So this is a response to my previous question about Laddu and Lady, where Laddu was possessive, the first video that I showed. And Chani says, could she be feeling disappointed that she's unable to come to you, or even a little frustrated? Could she be feeling unfairness? Quite possible. Um, quite possible that she could be feeling unfairness, that she's not able to come to us. But if you saw that video, you also see that she is responding to Laddu um, without completely backing off. She's still taking one step. She's being slow about it. She is still telling him, I want this, but I also get what you're saying. So I'll go slow about it. Um, and I've seen that happen quite a few times where she doesn't back down entirely. She's not letting go her needs um, just because Laddu is feeling insecure. I'll come to what we would do as well, how we would respond to the situation. But between the two of them, And remember, they are street dogs, right? They are part of a group. um, they keep roaming around and go around everywhere together, right? So if they have they have a friendship, they have a relationship of some sort, some kind of a family dynamic that works there, some kind of a friendship dynamic that works there. So she can see him feeling jealous, insecure, possessive, whatever in the first video. But she also is like, I understand, but I also not going to back down fully, but I take it slow. I can see. Rebooting the brain. I know these are like, and this is such a difficult conversation, right? Like nothing is a right or a wrong answer here, right? There's nothing like, yes, this is the dog that is wrong, this is the dog that is right, this is how, what this dog should have done. There is no right or wrong answer here. And I'll come to why we are having this conversation, right? Varun, this is my husband. He's done this from the first day he came home. It's possessive behavior, in my opinion. So he's exhibited this towards Lady. He's exhibited this towards Zoe in the first couple of days that he was at home and he didn't know what's going on. He's done this towards Bala. So there's a lot of this is my friend. This is also my friend. You can't meet each other, but you're my friend. You're just my friend. You both don't get to be friends. He's done this a lot, right? Um, Kritika says, so Max gets very worked up when we pet Luna. So we had to greet and talk to Luna behind closed doors and do it a bit quietly. So we met both their emotions, I guess. So this is what I would do with Laddu and Lady, right? Uh, they have their own dynamic and they're working around their dynamic. But I can see that maybe Laddu is doing this out of some kind of insecurity or maybe lack of love in his life prior to coming around our home. Or he loves human interaction a lot and he wants to have all of that love and interaction to himself. I don't know where that's coming from. For Lady, because he is insecure and he's possessive, she doesn't get that interaction that she may want, she may need. She may have that need to meet her human interaction and human contact, but she's not able to do because of Laddu. So we would, like, very often, I would be petting one of them and my husband would be petting the other. So we, or suddenly, like, I'd be petting Laddu and Varun would be petting Lady, and suddenly Laddu would go towards Varun. So then I would call Lady. So we would kind of take turns. We would meet their individual needs while not judging either of them. And that is the hardest part, because um you're sitting there, you're seeing one dog trying to bully another dog, and you're like, this poor dog is not, is not getting, this is not the right way to be dealing with her, or this is not what Laddu should be doing. So, lady's so sad, like, so sad looking at her. Laddu is being a bully, Laddu is doing this and that and whatnot. Though I use the word bully, it, like, to me, that label has no judgment. Like, he was doing what he was doing, and to me it's okay. But all of this has to happen safely, and that's the priority, right? So if you're being jealous, be jealous safely, right? And we'll try and meet your needs, but just be safe around each other. If you're being angry, and do you feel like the second video that I showed, could that be anger from Lady? That's the other bit, right? Could she be angry? And interestingly, the last couple of weeks, so what happens is, the three of them come, Laddu, Lady and Bala. They spend the entire day at home, right? Like from 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. sometimes till 12 a.m. they are at home. Then they want to be let out and they don't want to spend the night here. So they go out, They go God knows where, but they spend their time out. I think one of those nights, there was some fallout between Laddu and Lady in some way for some reason. How many of us have had fights with our friends, and we are like angry with them, don't want to talk to them for some time, or I don't want to see their face for a while till we feel better about it. How many times we have felt it, right? So I feel like there was some kind of a fallout of that form, but even in that fallout, or even in that anger, or even in that, I don't want to talk to you right now kind of a phase, they still wanted to be around each other, but also give space to each other. And that's very interesting, that part of it, like how they have a dynamic where they're not like friends at that moment. They're having a fight, and they're disappointed in each other for some reason. God knows what fight they had. And in what would happen is, lady always is lying down on one of our couches, and those are right next to the door, the main door from where the dogs come in and out. And every time like Laddu would pass that space, she would express her anger, saying, don't come here. Now Laddu would respect it, saying that yes, I am also not interested in interacting with you, and he would go do his thing. One occasion that anger escalated into, like, they both ended up at the threshold of the house, such a small space, not able to like walk away from each other. They got into fight. And then we were like, okay, we can't allow in and out of the house without supervision, especially Laddu. If he's going in and out, and ladies at home, that cannot happen without supervision. So we had to intervene because they resorted to a little bit of a risk. They did not get into major fight, they did not like hurt each other, but we felt like it escalated beyond just growling and barking at each other. But does this kind of behavior make you uncomfortable by dogs? If it was your own dog or dogs under the same roof, would this make you uncomfortable? How would you deal with that? Because here these are two street dogs. They had some interaction somewhere outside this space. They came back being angry with each other. Um, and they also have a dynamic that exists outside of us, that exists independently, where they're able to deal with this dynamic changes pretty well. I would say at 90% of the times they're able to deal with it well. Sometimes they're like, I don't want to see your face, don't come here. It escalates. But how would you deal with it if it is your own dogs under your roof, companion animals under your roof? Two dogs who suddenly have change in dynamics, and it's all happening under your roof, within the four walls of your house. um, what would you do? Is that okay? Is one dog allowed to be angry with the other dog? um, is Are you going to intervene? Are you not going to intervene? How would you react or respond to this? I'm waiting for responses. It's so weird to like just stare into camera and not have anybody to talk to on the other end. But you all have been quite engaging and responding to everything that I've asked. So I'm hoping you have more responses to give. None of you answered whether you think that's anger. To me, it looked anger, that the lady was angry with Laddu. And interestingly, Laddu was giving her space. You're angry? Okay. I will not trouble you. I think it would make me uncomfortable and took me by surprise when Luna first got angry with Max. Yeah, absolutely. Max being the newer addition to our family. Now this is where it becomes difficult, right? When when they're in our homes, first, a lot of their lifestyle, um, and their life, their interactions, social interactions, are so dependent on what we are doing with them. And this is what is different about street dogs, right? Maybe the 7 8 hours that they're outside of our house, they have variety of ways of dealing with these situations. And very interestingly, when they're outside our house, they are like a tight knit group. They are all together, barring this one time that they've gotten into some kind of an altercation. But at home, when they're here, Laddu is in our room. Lady is not allowed to come to our room because of Laddu. Laddu is like, no, you stay there only. That's your space. This is my space. So lady sleeps on the couch, one of the two couches. Laddu sleeps in our room, and Bala sleeps in the terrace. So they all have their own spaces. They are not coming in each other's way through the day. Could that be why they're able to kind of cope with some disagreements that they might have or conflicts that they might have? I was toying with the intervention bit. I would instinctively uh, w- would like to intervene, but I also know that what I do would matter, and I could contribute to the existing insecurity by taking side. Right. So that's the other bit. Are we able to intervene in the right way? So I had this client who had multiple dogs in under the same roof, and the dogs were getting into fights, terrible fights, right? Where they have had wounds when they have attacked each other. So terrible fights. Um, and normally the response is, kind of split them and take them away from each other, right? That is what you would like to do, because this is risk, right? This is high risk situation where they're hurting each other. This is not healthy way of dealing with the situation. The client said that if we try to intervene, uh, even if they're tense, the fight would escalate. So then I was like, maybe just see if you can walk away and call one of them away. Whoever is ready to come to you, right? Call any one of them away. Maybe that might be a better way to de escalate the situation. Uh, Now, I firstly, if such a situation occurred under my roof where I have two companion animals who are getting into such fights, uh, try and find out why that's happening. I think that would be the first and foremost important thing, because unlike the streeties, who first and foremost like they have the freedom to walk away from each other, they're far better at conflict resolution. They have a lot of space, and they're good at body language communication and everything. uh, and their lifestyle is not chosen by another person. They kind of have a lifestyle that is more or less independent of a human, right? um so if it is happening to our companion animals, the dogs who share space and homes with us, then at first and foremost wonder where things went wrong, what happened, why they might be getting into this kind of a situation, why this conflict. I would also create more and more opportunities for them to get as much space from each other as possible. So this is what I did with Zoe. Coming to what, so I've spoken about what Laddu does, what Bala does, what Lady does, but what does Zoe do in all of this, right? Because she's also sharing the space, and interestingly, she gets very scared when Laddu and Lady are having like that one of those moments, right? Which is where lady's sitting on a couch and she's probably growling at Laddu or whatever, Zoe tends to get scared, right? Laddu is like, I'll not come into your space. I'll walk away. You do your thing. I'm not coming, interacting with you. But Zoe gets scared. Now, in that situation, because lady has also a few times growled at Zoe, and it happens at very specific. Now I have got an understanding of when that happens. Um, at least 90% of the times I'm able to guess when this happens. So either when Zoe is a little hyper about certain things, or she's coming in and out of, again, the house door while lady is sleeping, or she's greeting. So like, I had a friend come home, and then she sat next to lady, and Zoe wanted to say hi to this person, so Zoe kind of like was saying hi and greeting this person, and lady got irritated and said, Zoe, don't do this. So Zoe has developed this, and she's very sensitive. She tends to get like afraid of someone, even like one interaction of that sort, right? So now she's very wary of lady. So we now tend to reassure Zoe. We take her away from lady. We create space so that lady doesn't feel the need to escalate it towards Zoe, because between Laddu and lady, they have a dynamic that they are able to figure things out amongst themselves. But Zoe doesn't have the same skills to be able to navigate this conflict with lady. So we take her away from them, uh, and we kind of reassure her quite a bit. When she has to do inside outside the house and lady is sleeping, I always split. So I'm standing, in front of lady and telling Zoe, don't worry, lady's not going to do anything. You can go out or you can come in. I would like go along with her. I'll come back with her. So when it comes to companion dogs, especially the ones who are not part of this group one, like Zoe is not part of that group of Laddu lady and Bala, but also that, um, I am the one who is fully responsible to what is happening with Zoe. Be it that, if she's scared for a certain, situation, she's hyper, she's dysregulated, something in the environment, something in the interaction has caused this, and it is up to me to help her deal with it. So, what is the best way that I can solve that situation for her, um, while not telling her what to do? I think that's the thin line that we have to navigate. So I know where you're coming from, Chani, in terms of I don't want to intervene, but do I intervene? Should I intervene? Is an important like, it's a decision that we have to take, because sometimes if we don't intervene, it can become risky. If we intervene unnecessarily, then we're not letting them navigate and letting them use their abilities to deal with that situation, right? And that's probably the hard balance to keep. So that was the other thing that I wanted to say. There was one last point, and then we can end the live, also because Zoe is getting worked up and she's hungry. The last point that I wanted to make was, why is it important that we acknowledge that dogs have anger, possessiveness, they might be bullies, they might be mean to each other. um, the reason why I think it's important, and this conversation came up a few weeks back in some other conversation, I don't even remember where somebody said, oh, animals loving, unconditional love, they are so good. Like, this good is associated with animals, that I feel like when we see these behaviors, these emotions that are normally associated with bad, like anger, possessiveness, frustration, being mean, being bullies, being whatever else that we feel like is not good, then we end up saying that there is something wrong with that dog who is displaying that emotion or behavior. Did you hear that in the background? I don't know. So it was quite loud for me, at least, obviously. Yeah, she went to sleep. So I feel like if we cannot acknowledge the nuance of these emotions, uh, hi Zoe is what Chandni is saying. Yeah, I mean, she made her presence felt in the life. But as I was saying, if we can't acknowledge that there are certain emotions that are just there, they're not good, they're not bad, but as long as an individual is in the right space, in the right environment to be able to deal with that emotion in a healthy way while not risking those around them or not harming those around them, then I think it's a fair emotion to have. It's okay to have anger, it's okay to be jealous, it's okay to be possessive, it's okay to feel insecure, as long as we're not going down the route of being unhealthy or toxic or you know risky or harmful to those to ourselves as well as those around us. So this applies to us and it applies to our dogs. But if we just assume that dogs don't get angry, dogs don't get jealous, dogs don't bully, they are not mean, they are unconditional lovers, they will shower you with love and all of those things. If we just you know make animals and dogs synonymous to all the good things, then when we do see bad, in double quotes, bad emotions or the things that we see are bad, then we feel like there's something wrong with the animal in question. So this is why I think it's important that we don't say, like, animals are obviously a lot more cooperative, they are more, they try and then navigate, especially when we see our street dogs, right? They are cooperative, they are great at conflict resolution, but that doesn't mean that they are not jealous or possessive. That doesn't mean that they don't get angry. That doesn't mean that you know they are not frustrated or they're not bullying. Like, I've had like a few people come and question me about, this particular dog is bullying others, and how do we stop it? And of course the dog shouldn't, like, we should find ways so that they are not a risk to those around them. But if we don't agree that they can have these dynamics, they can have these traits, characteristics, with those around them, then we end up saying something is wrong with the dog. I don't know, am I making sense? These were my thoughts, my ideas. This is what came up to me when when the idea of, like, these all dogs are good dogs. Of course they're good, but maybe our definition of good may be different. um all dogs are loving, they're unconditional, they have unconditional love for people or those around them. They don't get angry. These are like blanket statements we have seen people make, and this can just be detrimental to our dogs only. This does not mean, now I have to come, like, give my disclaimers, because people will take this away and then they'll make other conclusions. This does not mean that things like dominance, alpha, um, pack leader theories exist in the way we have seen in dog behavior and dog training world. I don't know. Does that make sense? I have to give the, because the moment you say that dogs can get angry and they can be bullies and they can be mean to each other, the next thing is, oh, then they can also be alpha and dominant and whatnot, will be the next line of conversation. And now I have to address that, right? So that's a disclaimer. I'm not saying that because we see we are okay, or we can start accepting and looking at their emotions of anger, of possessiveness, of being mean to other dogs around them, or not having the moral compass that we might have. I might feel bad for Lady, but Laddu might not have the same moral compass, or even Lady might not have the same moral compass. Who knows? But just because I'm saying all of this does not mean that it warrants any credibility to the dominance theories or alpha theories that we have seen in the dog training world. I hope that makes it very clear and does not give any room for misinterpretation, misunderstanding whatsoever. Okay, so I think this is a good time to stop. Any ideas for the next? Anything that we want to reflect on? Any ideas of what we want to think through the week and come back? With anger, I think there was one post that I wanted to talk about. Just give me a second, I'll bring that up, and then we can like um, respond to Zoe's restlessness. Um, so I keep sending posts to myself so that I remember what to. Any thoughts on what we want to talk about next time? Sometimes I feel like I run out of ideas, but I mean, of course, with so many questions and so many things that keep coming up, I don't think we'll ever run out of these kind of ideas. Okay, so there is this Instagram page called Repairing the Nervous System. There are a lot of conversations around nervous system regulation and things like that. And this was the first slide of that, which says suppressing your anger increases nervous system dysregulation. It can lead to chronic shutdown, freeze, disassociation, and even burnout. Of course, this is made in context of humans, but it can be extended to our dogs if we don't give them opportunity to healthily experience and express and cope with anger or any of the things that we spoke about, the any emotion that they have, then we might just be doing more harm for them than we are doing good. I think that's a good point to end at. What do you think? Okay, if you don't have idea, of course, you free to DM me and share some ideas of conversations you might want to have in the future. I think what I want to talk about is we can pick up. I will do this research if there are papers around this, but like at what age street dogs tend to leave their families, if at all they do, how far they travel away from their families, what can we learn from that, and why do we talk about street dogs so much and so extensively when we're talking about companion dogs? Is there any merit in comparing the two? Is there anything we can learn from them? And a few things that probably my dogs have learned from street dogs as well. Maybe we can touch upon that if I have. I think Sammy has. He learned a little bit of polite communication from street dogs. I think I do have a video of this that I had presented during the Hard Dog Summit in 2021, 2022. Sorry. Um, but yeah, I think we can talk about that next time. If nothing else comes up. So I hope you had a good life. Thank you for all those who stayed for so long and have reached the end of the live as well. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, share it with people who you think might enjoy some of these conversations. Subscribe to the channel so that you're notified of when I go live. And do let me know if this time works better than 7 p.m. And then maybe we can change the time for those of you who are not in um, India. Enjoyed this. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much, Anni, for tuning in and staying the entire time and being very engaging and conversational and taking part in the discussions. I enjoyed it too. And I will see you in the next live. I'm not very sure whether the next live will happen on 21st or not. For me, from Curacao, is that how? I don't know. This time worked little better. Great. I think 8 p.m. is better. Let's see. Maybe we'll do 8 p.m. I am traveling next week on Wednesday. So maybe we may not do on Wednesday. We might do Tuesday. I don't know yet. I'll let you know on Instagram and Facebook, and you can join accordingly. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Have a good day. Happy Valentine's Day. Oh, we could talk about love, ideas of love, thoughts about love. We can talk about that too next time. I'll see you next week. Have a good day, good night, wherever you are. And I'll see you next week. Take care.